Hello and welcome to episode of In the Trench with Gang Green. I'm your host Blair, also known as Bubbs. Today we're joined by a very special guest, Seth Bradley, director over at 1JD Films, which has more than 55 Emmy Award nominations and 16 Emmy Awards. Thank you so much for stopping by today. How's it going, man?
Hey, thanks for having me on, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, looking forward to getting into this, talking all things about 1JD Films and all that great stuff that you do over there. I wanted to start off and just talk about when did you want to get into this? When did you want to get into the film business and stuff like that? And when did you officially start with the New York Jets and now obviously being a director over there?
Yeah, so I think growing up, I always wanted to be, in sports in some way. I was never athletic or anything like that, so I knew my, playing career wasn't going to take me anywhere, obviously. But I loved sports as a kid. I loved, watching Sports Center, watching, 30 for 30s, really anything, connected to the game. So I
Mhm.
think growing up, I always kind of had aspirations to be in sports broadcasting or, get into doing play by play or really anything that I, really could keep me connected to the game. So when I got to high school, I was fortunate, to have, a really good broadcasting program called MLTV, Mountain Line Television. And really that gave me 3 solid years of laying a foundation of just kind of getting involved in video production. Obviously, you don't really know much at that time. You don't really know, a ton about production and things like that. But it just kind of solidified that this is what I wanted to do. So, I know I went to Penn State, was fortunate to be part of the, Center for Sports Journalism there, had some great professors. Still was kind of feeling out what I wanted to do in terms of, what the next step was going to be after Penn State. And, from there, I got hired by Guido D'Elia, who's the marketing guru for Penn State football. He's the guy that created the whiteout. He's a guy that is around college football circles. Is a fairly household name, but I'm not sure if everyone's familiar with him. But he hired me for my first job working for Penn State football in the marketing department, and really that kind of laid the foundation for me of what I was going to do. So I worked. I was fortunate to work for him for a couple of years. Moved to the South. Started covering the SEC. Still kind of worked in college football, and then I got a job with the Jets in, I believe it was 2013. Might have been 2014, but this will be my 10th season with the Jets coming up, and really just fortunate to kind of see my role and everything expand here. 6 or 7 years ago, we really took a big deep dive into what our programming, what our content was going to look like, and it was heavy in documentary production, which that's been my dream job since I was a kid. So going to players' hometowns, kind of telling their story, learning what it took for a guy to reach the NFL was really at the forefront of what we were doing. And that kind of laid the foundation for One Jet Strive, which is our signature team docu
Mhm.
series, which we've done now for, this will be our 6th season doing it coming up. But really, the fans have gravitated towards One Jet Strive.
Mhm.
They've really kind of learned about it. They've it's kind of become a brand. And with that, my goal is to be to kind of create a larger umbrella above that, which is 1JD Films, which is kind of our 30 for 30. So basically,
Mhm.
what we've been doing the last couple of years is try to create a brand that, you know, kind of goes above One Just Drive and really allows us to do multiple series, multiple
Mhm.
documentaries. And that's kind of the, where the origin of Flight started. And, we've done 3, iterations of that series. We've done the Diehards, a bunch of different, documentaries that have come out of our department. So, been fortunate to really kind of be at the forefront of this, building this brand, this documentary brand. But that's kind of how it all got started.
That's awesome. Yeah, obviously, like you mentioned, working your way up. Just out of curiosity, I know that's one of the more crazier environments in football. Have you attended a couple whiteout games before?
Yeah, it's like I think it's the best atmosphere in college
Mhm.
football. I've been to a lot of the SEC stadiums. I've been to LSU at night for an LSU Bama game. I've been to Clemson
Nice.
at night when they play Georgia. It's like there's some great atmospheres in the
Mhm.
SEC. Clemson's a great atmosphere as well. But yeah, fortunate to, see the whiteout up close and what that atmosphere is like. And to me, college football is just, I'm a huge fan of it.
Mhm.
I love the NFL now, obviously working for the Jets, but kind of growing up, I was, a massive college football fan. My family's had season tickets to Penn State now since, before I was born. So really kind of, that's where I kind of learned the game and really kind of fell in love with football.
That's awesome. Yeah, definitely something too that I've kind of on my bucket list as well is to head out to one of those games because you watch them on TV and it's just crazy. You can get an entire stadium to wear white and make
Yeah.
that much noise is awesome. So I wanted to get into a little bit, obviously, as you mentioned, the documentary series, and we'll get to some of the One Jets Drive stuff as well. But obviously, Flight 23 Ascension has dropped now, and 3 episodes are all out. If you haven't checked it out, definitely go check it out. It's awesome, a lot of fun. If you're not already excited as a Jet fan, you're gonna watch it, and you're gonna be even more excited with seeing all the behind the scenes stuff. Just take me through kind of when did you guys start to put that together? All of the clips and the hard work and the hours that go into producing such a big series like that, especially with all of the news and obviously Rodgers coming here and all the excitement around this team this time of year.
Yeah, so the flight series started 2 years ago when Coach Sala was hired. We launched this off-season series, Flight 2021.
Mhm.
It was supposed to give fans kind of an even greater look into what it takes to build an NFL team in the off-season. So we're fortunate with a guy like Joe Douglas in charge. Coach Sala and his staff have been great, but they've really been trusting of us to kind of tell this story in a very unique way with cameras, in meetings and, posted up in different places in the facility and really kind of being able to tell the story of this team. So I think when, when they first started building this thing, really, obviously Joe's been here since 2019, but you felt, when Coach Sala was hired, this was going to be the start of something
Yeah.
where you kind of knew they were going to build this thing into like a legitimate contender. Like you could
Mhm.
just feel it, even 2 years ago. You knew it was going to there was going to be some bumps in the road and it was going to take time. But I think, when you look at what they did in 2022, with the incredible draft, 3
Yeah.
first-round picks, drafting Brees, you knew the foundation was there, that this team was like very close to becoming a legitimate championship contender.
Mhm.
So as we, kind of got near the end of the season and we start talking about what 23 is going to look like, I think it became clear, once the talk started that, the Jets are going to go out and acquire a veteran quarterback, this is going to be a massive series. This is going to be a massive opportunity.
Yeah.
This, to me, the Jets, really are always at the forefront of an offseason, but now you're talking about they're going to go and acquire a quarterback, the veteran nature. It's like all of a sudden they become the
Mhm.
number one story in sports.
Yeah.
So really in January, we started, we kind of started laying the framework of what the series was going to look like. And then I think as the offseason progressed, it became clear, like, okay, like there's a chance to get Aaron Rodgers. Like what could this look like? And, obviously they're flirting with Derek Carr throughout the offseason. And there's all
Yeah.
these different, things that could potentially happen.
Mhm.
We're kind of working this thing in real time. We're trying to figure out, okay, what's the narrative going to be? What's it going to be like, if we get Aaron Rodgers? What's it going to be
Yeah.
like if we get Derek Carr? If
Mhm.
if it's somebody else? So I think it was really kind of cool to see it through even just the lens of like planning this show, because we're on like, we're in parts of the offseason, we're like, okay, like the team's on a plane
Yeah.
now to go to California, or like
Mhm.
Aaron Rodgers is going to go on Pat McAfee. And we're like, okay, how are we covering this? How is this going to look in the show?
Mhm.
What's this going to be like? And I think it really started back in January. It was just kind of cool to kind of go with the ebbs and flows of what that pursuit was. But ultimately, we really wanted to create a documentary that, not just, right now fans could watch, but hopefully, the Jets win a championship, this year and years to come.
Mhm.
And fans can look back on this offseason and say, like, this is a documentary I'm going to watch when the Jets built a champion. So I think that's kind of what we were hoping to do.
Yeah.
Obviously, entertain the fans is our number one thing. Like we want it to be something that, fans look to and they enjoy. And, it really is something that not just Jets fans, but fans of the NFL can look to and really enjoy. What was, in my opinion, one of the biggest acquisitions in the history of sports, not just the NFL, not just the Jets, but when you look at the magnitude of acquiring a Hall of Fame quarterback, few moments have matched up to what this really was when you take in consideration it's not just, Aaron Rodgers, it's not just the Jets, it's New York and the biggest, sports market in the world. And this was all kind of happening. We were the mecca of that.
Yeah, that's awesome. As you mentioned, you're spot on right there towards the end. I mean, especially for Rodgers, like what it would do to his legacy if he comes here and wins another Super Bowl, obviously already doing so in Green Bay to win two with two franchises. He would join a group of not many guys that have ever done it. Obviously, Peyton Manning, Tom Brady among just some of the guys, but he would join just another tier of quarterbacks. You talked about, Flight 2021, Flight 2022, and then again this year. Was there anything you wanted, I guess you guys as a whole, over there at, One Jets Drive and One JD Films, was there anything you guys wanted to work on or improve upon from the first two documentary series to this year, which obviously with bringing in Rodgers was the big one and, really was going to attract a lot of people with the excitement around this team?
Yeah, absolutely. I think from a production standpoint, we're looking to improve every single year. So we look at what type of gear we're using, how can we get greater access, how can we tell this story in a way that's going to be unique to the way somebody else will tell a story. It's like as a filmmaker, and we watch a lot of other teams, internal documentaries, and we watch Hard Knocks and things like that. I think it's always fun to kind of say like, okay, like if we had that footage or we had that access, we would tell the story totally different than somebody else. So I think you're always trying to up the game a little bit. You're always trying to say like, okay, like, can we do this? Can we shoot the interviews differently? Can we put cameras in a different location than maybe we would, when Rodgers arrived, the day he arrived at the Jets facility, it was very planned out in terms of who was going to be where and what shots we were going to get. We knew we only had one shot to get it. It's not something you could go back and be like, hey, Aaron, like go back out of the building and then come back in and we're going to get this shot again. So when you see like the shots down the long hallway of Rodgers and Woody and Saleh, like that's all very like planned out. That's all, very, we put a lot of thought and effort into planning that to make sure it's going to, play the best for, our shows. And I think the way we shoot the games and things like that are, it's all similar to that, where we're putting more cameras in different locations. We're, figuring out, who can be mic'd where, like what sound do we have on the bench. And it's really just, it's always kind of like evaluating ourselves to say like, okay, like, 2021 was great. 2022 is, awesome. We got, Adam Schefter, we got all these other like big name media personalities be in it. Now 23, we know all eyes are going to be on us because, the Jets are going out and pursuing Aaron Rodgers and ultimately acquiring him.
Yep.
How can we make this the biggest production we've ever done? And I think that was always the goal going in.
Yeah. And as you mentioned, it was cool to watch as a fan too, with Rodgers, as you mentioned, walking down that hallway. And then up on that hallway is where you had, I think Saleh implemented this where, and I'm sure you've seen it there, where they have each matchup from the past season. And it was funny to see, Rodgers look up at the wall and see that he was on the wall twice from when the Jets, faced the Packers back last year. You've talked about, Flight 2022 a little bit as well with the big draft class and drafting 2 Rookie of the Years and Breece Hall, obviously, who was on his way to being a Rookie of the Year before the injury. Looking back on that, just what was that like to, have that just record and be able to document such a historic draft class, not only Jets history, but NFL history?
Yeah, that day is one I'll never forget in my time working here. I think that, first of all, I grew up loving the draft. I'm a huge fan of, the NFL draft and making trades. And like, I always watched it growing up. So when we started doing the series, a couple of years ago, my sister even said to me at one point, she was like, man, who would have thought like you'd now be doing like documentaries on the draft for how much, you liked it growing up. And I think when we entered the draft that night, I don't think anybody really like fully knew what to expect. You kind of knew like, okay, like, these are the guys they like. You're hoping this is going to fall our way. There's like a lot of pressure. There's nerves. Like it's really hard to describe the energy on draft day, like inside an NFL facility. It's unmatched. So I think knowing we had the 2 top 10 picks, and seeing how that fell, like, Sauce was obviously their number 1 target all along. Garrett was their number 1 receiver. And they get these 2 guys, and you're like, okay, like everyone's excited. And then you look over, I think it was around pick 12, and Saleh says to Joe, like, he's going to fall. And we knew Jermaine was very high on their board. Like from the draft meetings we were in, we were like, they love Jermaine. We know he's, one of the top edge rushers on their board, and we need an edge rusher. So, when Joe starts picking up the phone and you're just like, holy cow, like I'm thinking selfishly from like a documentary standpoint, I'm like, this has to go through. Like we have like incredible like access to, when they were all breaking down the draft meetings, and Joe's just like working the phones for, I want to say it was like 2 hours straight. He was on the phone, just calling, like trying to get it. And, for that ultimately to go through and for us to be able to kind of document that and show it was just incredible. And I'll never forget, Joe had told, Christina, who's, his administrative assistant, he says to her, like, I don't remember that happening that way. Like looking back on it, like watching that scene, like, I don't even remember like me, like doing all that. And like Joe's making like, reacting to like what other teams are picking. And it was just one of those things where like, it's such a moment in time, that you're just like, man, like this is so cool that this happened. But I'll never forget, it's the end of the first round, and like we kind of come back up, and Joe and Robert had done like their end of night press conference, and we're kind of like wrapping up for the night, and they start to like make calls to see if they're going to trade back in for Brees. And I'll just never forget like Rex Hogan saying like, hey, turn the cameras on. Like this could be a historical moment. We might trade back in. And, it was one of those moments where you're just like, you're thinking about that 2000 draft class when the Jets had 4 first-round picks. And it was just one of those things where like the confidence is, I've never seen higher in the building. Like, they got, 3 of the best players already. They're going to go back in to get Brees. And then we knew going into night 2, obviously, like Brees was the guy they wanted. So to ultimately end up with him, who's, in my opinion, is going to end up being one of the best running backs in the game.
Yeah.
It was just historic. And then, think about a guy like Jeremy Ruckert is probably going to, burst out this year and, be one of our best players too. Yeah. So it's just really cool. And Michael Clemens, there's just so many guys in that class that you think like you look to and you'd be like, these guys are all going to be like incredible players in the league.
Yeah, that's awesome. It just, as you mentioned, it's crazy to look back on them. And the Jets got the best corner in the draft. They got the best receiver, best running back, and one of the better edges in the draft as well. So to be able to fill all those needs was just crazy. And it just, too, I mean, looking past it, the past coaches and GMs, it must be refreshing too, from your standpoint and, us as fans as well, to finally see Joe Douglas, Robert Saleh, football people making the right football decisions, as opposed to, past couple years where, but prior to them coming in here, where it was a train wreck in many ways, I guess, if you want to put it that way. But it must be refreshing too, from a film standpoint, to be able to, video all that stuff and see all this success from the front office.
Yeah, it's a great story with Joe is the guy that gave me my first job, Eric Long, in the sports industry. He was working for the Binghamton Mets minor league team. He's now the VP of production for the Eagles, and who obviously that's where Joe came from. He texted me after we hired Joe, and he said, like, you guys are going to win big there. Like, it's like, he's so good. And I remember, I think it was even after year 1 or year 2, I went out to dinner with him, and, he said to me again, he was like, Joe's going to build it into like a championship contender. Like, like he's just like, there's so much confidence in him, in the Eagles building of what he could be. But I also think like, the best part about Joe has been the way he's wanted to highlight his staff. And, the one thing I really like about the flight series is, you kind of get to not only know him and Coach Sala, at a different level, but you get to kind of see like who are making these decisions, who are the Rex Hogans, the Greg Nejmas, Chad Alexander, Phil Savage, like all these guys that are like, it's a pretty star-studded front office, and, down to the area scouts who are out on the road, 95% of the year scouting these guys. And then the coaching staff as well. I think it's very few series you see around the league, I think, will show who are making these decisions. And I think it adds a level of conviction to the decisions that are made, because you see the buy-in from everybody, in the organization. It's not just Joe like making a knee-jerk reaction pick on draft night or whatever, the guy he wants.
Yeah.
It's really him listening to everybody else. And I think one thing I've learned from being in those draft meetings is Joe doesn't have to say a ton. Like he kind of he's listening to everybody else, and then he's obviously going to make the final call, and he's going to be like, this is a guy I want. But he really sits back and takes in all the information from everybody else. And you're like, he listens to every assistant coach. He listens to the area scout. He's just listening. And it's like, man, like that's a lot of trust in everybody on his staff. And, I think, it's kind of been cool to get an up close look at all that for the last couple of years.
Yeah, definitely. And Salah a lot of times says it too in his press conferences, where a lot of open dialogue between, all the coaching staff and, especially watching the videos and the way you described it here, there's so much communication that goes into, again, like you mentioned, all these decisions. And that's probably why the success rate has obviously been where it's been in the past couple seasons, past draft and free agency and trades and stuff like that. So that's awesome. One other thing I wanted to get to, then we can move on here to One Jets Drive and then the Diehards. Rich Eisen has been narrating it. Did you guys reach out to Rich Eisen? Did you have a couple guys on your list? Obviously him being a big Jets fan. Who thought of that? What was, I guess, the process of getting him to narrate?
Yeah. So I think, one thing that I think helps separate our productions from others around the league is the narration. I think it's a style that, NFL Films has used now for years. Liev Schreiber obviously narrates Hard Knocks. John Hamm narrates All or Nothing. It's the writing of, the documentaries, I think, is just as important as anything for telling these stories. We take a lot of pride in that part of it. So, we have John Armand, who's, an incredible narrator for One Jets Drive. We've had him for a couple of years. But with Flight, we kind of got to 2022 and we said, this series it's unique. It's not that many episodes. Last year we did 5 episodes, and we just kind of wanted to add like a celebrity narration element to it. We thought it was a series that we could get, somebody to sign on to do it. We had a couple, names written down, but ultimately Rich was at the top of our list from day one because, one, he's such a big personality in the NFL. His show is, his radio show is incredible. I grew up watching Rich on SportsCenter, in the 90s. So, I've always been a huge fan of his. But two, he's such a passionate Jets fan. It's like you hear it in his voice, like every day he's on the air. This guy like is a national media personality, but he lives and breathes the Jets.
Yeah.
So I think it was kind of a cool way for us to break the third wall a little bit and like have the narrator kind of have, a piece in this where you're hearing it through the eyes of not only Rich Eisen, who's the media personality, but Rich Eisen, the fan. And, we try to write to his voice. We write in a way where it's like, okay, like, now he's kind of crossing that third wall and becoming like, okay, this is him speaking as a diehard fan and what this means to the team. And we specifically did that a couple times this year with, the Aaron Rodgers trade and things like that. But Rich was bought in from day one. It didn't take much convincing for him to do it, but it obviously, when you have somebody sign on like that blind, it takes some trust for them to be like, okay, like the show is good. We had to show them, what 2021 was, and we wanted him to, see what the product we were putting together. Because obviously, like, there's a part of that which you want to make sure he wants to be a part of it and is proud to be a part of it. He's going to promote it himself. But But when we got to this offseason, he did an interview with Eric Allen, at the Super Bowl on Radio Row. And EA asked him, like, you did Flight 2022 last year. And he immediately said, like, oh, I'd definitely do it again, Flight 23. And it was kind of cool. It was a kind of cool moment because it immediately, like, okay, like we can get him to do it again. But for me, it was just cool, like as somebody I grew up watching, to have him be a part of this in some way. I think it just adds a little bit more to it from a production standpoint.
Yeah, that's really cool. Obviously, Rich Eisen for many Jets fans is kind of, in a way, sometimes the voice of Jets fans. Being able to be such a diehard, have his voice out there on so many platforms with his radio show and NFL Network and all that cool stuff. Flight 23 was awesome. It was a lot of fun. Just hearing Aaron Rodgers say, Aaron Rodgers, Flight 23, it was just, as a Jet fan, it gets you so excited. But now moving on here to One Jets Drive, which obviously come out, during starting training camp and then throughout the regular season. Awesome to watch, a lot of fun as well. But they're about, 25, 30-minute long episodes, but they're quicker turnaround. So how do you guys, from a production standpoint, get all the clips, get all the film, put that all together to get much more videos out in a shorter amount of time?
Yeah, it's a huge challenge. I'll give a shout out to our crew. I think we're fortunate to have, a bunch of producers that can wear many hats from a production standpoint. Our producers are cinematographers, they're editors, our writers. And it really takes that to be able to pull off what we're doing from an internal production standpoint. So I think, our training camp schedule with One Jets Drive is very ambitious. It was something that, being biased aside, I don't think any other team is going to try to do what we're doing in terms of putting out weekly training camp episodes. Just because of the nature of the NFL, there's so much going on during camp. It's a huge lift. And I mean, that's the same schedule as Hard Knocks, essentially, in terms of you're getting 4 to 5 episodes, one per week, and we're covering the team essentially in real time. And, we've essentially gotten to a spot where we're not cutting production a couple days prior. So like what I mean by that is last year, the Jets played a Monday night game in the preseason against the Falcons. We had a Tuesday episode and we turned around a game scene on Tuesday morning to get into the Tuesday night episode. And, some people would say like, why would you do that? You probably didn't have to do it, but the nature of training camp is it's going so quick and injuries happen. And there's so many different things that happen during training camp that you really want to keep up with the team in real time because 2 weeks in camp can be an eternity in terms of everything that can happen.
Yeah.
So I think from a production standpoint, we really try to just, it's got to be current. I don't think a fan wants to watch an episode of something that happened like 2 or 3 weeks ago. And it's same in season, it's like everything, if we play the Bills on Monday Night Football to open the season, I mean, you can bet there's going to be an episode coming out on Thursday night about the Bills game because we're trying to stay current. The fans are at a fever pitch. They want it. They want to see what the game looks like through our cameras and lenses. So I think that's an important part of it. So I think our crew has to really kind of embrace that schedule because it's a grind. It's like I see the people I work with here more than I see my family during parts of the year. I'm not overly thrilled about to even admit that, but it's just the truth. It's the nature of producing sports documentaries. It's like holidays, nights, weekends, everything to try to get an episode done. But I think it's the talent we have in the building because you can't just hire somebody that's a one-trick pony that's only an editor or only a shooter. Everybody's got to have the ability to produce a feature. Everybody's got to have the ability to write. Everybody's got to have the ability to edit. And I think we have that here. And we're fortunate to have, a young staff that's super talented that gets it. It's taken time to kind of build it up to where we are now, where we have kind of like a team dedicated to working on these 1JD Films productions, but really takes a small army of people and really Even if one of our, the people on our production crew aren't working on these documentaries directly, they understand how they're shot. They understand, um, how we shoot these so they can contribute. There's
Yeah.
um, pretty much I could go through every one of our staff members and say like they had a piece in Flight 23 in some way because they had an incredible shot. They did something. They were running audio on a shoot. They helped edit something. They did something to contribute, and that even goes to like marketing and graphics and everything else. So I think it's it's a long-winded answer. It takes a lot. It's
Mhm.
turning around. A weekly training camp episode is obviously ambitious. Turning around an episode in season after a game, a Sunday to a Thursday
Yeah.
turnaround is a lot. But it's part of it is everyone kind of stays on task. They understand what the mission is, and ultimately it's we've kind of built a really good workflow and a really good setup here where everyone kind of gets it, so it all works well together.
Yeah, definitely. And as you mentioned, the Bills game Monday night, I wanted to ask too, this year, not only with Aaron Rodgers, being the quarterback, but there's a lot of big games. You obviously got the Bills on Monday night. You got the Cowboys week 2. You have the Chiefs on Sunday night. You'll have, the Vegas trip. You'll have the Giants, the Eagles. So there's a lot of really good matchups. It's just you and your crew and everybody over there. You guys just excited. I'm sure very excited to be able to create videos with, potential maybe beating Patrick Mahomes, creating a video of us beating the Giants, like the Bills. It's got to be, super exciting with all the anticipation.
Yeah, for me it's super exciting. It's like I said, this will be my 10th season coming up. It's been a grind, to say the
Mhm.
least. I've seen a lot here. It's but it's like I said before, it's cool to kind of see where we're at now because you could see this building for the last couple of years.
Yeah.
It definitely didn't. We tried to portray that in Flight 23. It's like, this didn't happen when Aaron Rodgers walked in the building. Like this
Mhm.
happened because Coach Saleh is building the
Yeah.
culture and Joe Douglas is building the culture, and Rodgers wanted to come here. But there's so much excitement with it. I think for our crew, like I'll tell my kids about the day Aaron Rodgers came in the building for the first time. I tell my grandkids about it. I think it goes the same for our crew. It's like there's so much excitement right now, and I just think like the primetime games and everything, we're not used to it. I'll be honest
Yeah.
with you. It's like we're used to 1 p.m. games on Sunday.
Yeah.
It's going to be different, but I think the cool thing is I think fans that haven't been watching One Jets Drive or haven't been watching these shows that jump on this year are going to see a product that is very good because of what we've been doing the last couple of years. It's like we've been documenting this team really since 2018, through every season. And I think, I'm sure fans naturally get frustrated and they're like, well, I'm not going to watch. Like the team isn't any good. They're not winning any games.
Mhm.
We saw what the excitement level was last year when the team was, beating the Bills or,
Yeah.
winning, however many we won there towards the beginning of the season. And it was cool to kind of see like, okay, like people are starting to recognize what we're doing from a production standpoint. And there's a natural excitement to, how fans are going to receive our content because, the team's going to be winning. They're going to want to watch Aaron Rodgers. They're going to want to watch this team. And I think we're just excited for the ride that's to come this season.
Yeah, and as you mentioned with the 1 o'clock games and the primetime games, and we've got, if you're counting the Black Friday game, there were 6 hours primetime game, or yeah, max out of 6 primetime games. But it's crazy to think that last year there was 14 1 o'clock games. This year there will only be 6. So definitely will be in the primetime spotlight a lot. And as we all know, we're really looking forward to. And again, Rodgers has mentioned too, as well in Flight 23 about, as you mentioned, with what Saleh and Douglas have laid here. But he talks about having respect for both of them, what they did last year in the draft. Big reason again why he is here, as you mentioned, is what Douglas and Saleh have been able to do in the 2 years so far together. And seeing that steady improvement from year 1 to year 2 to now taking that big jump here in year 3. So something that you guys did, which was really cool to see, was Diehards, where you took some big Jets fans and kind of did a Jet fan series with Jets Twitter, which is obviously very known throughout the league. Um, kind of where did the idea come for that? And again, just everything that, went into create that series.
Yeah, so the Diehards really, I think fans learned about the Jets Twitter one because there was obviously a lot of talk on Twitter, which
Mm-hmm.
is such a crazy platform. I think a lot of our fans are on there, but we actually started it in season with kind of like a pilot episode with two diehard fans, and I think that was a really unique. I think this series provides a really unique look at one of the most extraordinary fan bases, and I think to me, like Jets fans are just a whole other level. It's
Mm-hmm.
like
Yeah.
I think when you see them on
Yep.
Twitter, you're thinking about like the New York market, the biggest market in the world. Their sports radio here is crazy. So I
Yep.
think we just thought there was a place for a series that would capitalize on some of these great fan stories. So the Twitter diehards, the Jets Twitter diehards, was really something I've been wanting to do now for a couple of years because I think it's just we can run away from like that portion of the fan base, but I think
Mm-hmm.
it was really time for us to kind of embrace it internally, um, especially in this off season. I think when I kind of pitched that idea and things like that in the back of my mind, I said, well, the Jets are going to go out and get a high profile quarterback. I didn't know it
Mm-hmm.
was going to be Aaron Rodgers. I hoped it would
Yeah.
be, for the
Mm-hmm.
sake of the documentary, but like, and for the team, obviously, but like, I kind of pitched it with the idea that like the offseason was going to be at this fever pitch. Twitter is kind of at the forefront now of social media where it's like everything's happening in real time. I think when you think of like historical moments, it's cool to think back to what Twitter would be like. It's at different time periods where it didn't exist, and here we are, like living the Aaron Rodgers saga through Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think was so unique. So I think we really wanted to, create something around that. I've had people internally say like, well, you should do a sequel now that, we've gotten Rodgers and just talk about that week that was,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
the Jets flying to California, the McAfee,
Yep.
interview and all that stuff that kind of happened around, that March 15th period of time because
Yeah.
it was so crazy. Um, so I think the series really, is designed to tell great fan stories, and it's going to continue this season. We're already kicking the tires on, some great features, and I think it's going to be something for everybody. I think you're going to get, the fan that's been a fan for 50 years. They grew up with season tickets, and you're also going to get maybe celebrity fans or a fan that's, a younger generation that's,
Mm-hmm.
become a diehard fan. I really wanted to create like something that was going to be unique, not just like,
Yeah.
okay, you're going to watch this every week and it's going to be the same type of fan, the person that's 90 years old that grew up a Jets season ticket holder. I
Yeah.
think there's all different types of Jets fans. And I think we really wanted to create something that would kind of give that platform of like, okay, like we're going to tell the story of, in my opinion, the most unique fan base in sports, the Jets.
Yeah, it's an awesome fan base. Obviously, a lot of suffering, but definitely that's what makes it so special now to have all this excitement. Like this is the best fan base in the league without a doubt, and all the it's a loyal fan base. There's so many Jets fans. It's just to be able to, if we get a championship delivered to us, would be awesome on so many levels because of everything we've been through and the loyalty, through it all. It was a lot of fun. So it was definitely a lot of fun to watch that. You were just recently on with an interview with Eric Allen. You mentioned something about or a little bit about a Brees Hall potential documentary and his return. If you don't, if you could just discuss a little bit about, what that could be, obviously coming back from the torn ACL, and hopefully a big piece for the Jets again this season.
Yeah, it's like, so going back to what I was kind of saying with building 1JD Films, it was an opportunity for us to create documentaries that weren't just within the One Jets Drive series or the Flight series or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's what's going to really differentiate us from other teams, and really like the industry is the diverse nature of what we're producing. So
Yeah.
at the end of the season, we had kind of talked to Brees, about, hey, like, would you ever be interested in us documenting your recovery? He's a big fan of One Jets Drive, and he's a big fan of what we do, and he's a great guy. And he was like, oh, like, he's like, I actually thought about that myself. Like, it'd be cool to kind of have like cameras like following the journey and stuff like that. So we approached the training staff. Dave Zuffaletto, who's, the Jets head trainer, who's a great guy. And we kind of told him this, vision we had to document Brees coming back and, showing, kind of an all access look to his rehab, and got total buy-in. I think it was, for me, it was one of the coolest moments of me working here because, 4 or 5 years ago, I would have probably been laughed out the door, like even pitching that, because, it's just not something that's typical, in an NFL organization. When you're talking about having cameras, in the training room and through somebody's, ACL rehab, it's a big ask. So I think, getting the green light to do it has been really cool. Brees has been all in on it. And we really, we're going to release it, when he comes back, because I think, we want the story to be told totally, in a full nature. But it's going to be cool because it's not only going to like basically show a fan what, this road back has been like for Brees, but it's going to tell the story of, how he's become, what I think he's going to end up being one of the best running backs in the game.
Yeah.
So it's really, like I said, of all the projects we've done, it's one of the ones I'm most excited about. And it's a great showcase for our production crew, which is, in my opinion, the best. There's a lot of hours. You're talking about Brees is rehabbing, every day, like a full day. And it's crazy to see. I think like in some cases too, you don't even get the sense of like, man, like, is he even struggling right now? Or like, because he's just, he's Brees, he's funny. He's like, he's joking around with us. He's doing this. And then you hear Saleh get up to, the press conference and say, like, he's running over 22 mile an hour. He looks incredible. And you're like, that's not normal. Like, I don't know, like a normal person, if I tear my ACL and I'm not coming back, like that, so it's kind of, it's kind of been cool to have a front row seat to it and really just see like how an elite athlete like that can come back. And, obviously, like, I know Jets fans were heartbroken when he went down. Our production crew was as well, because, how good he is and what he meant to this team. And it's been really cool to kind of, get an up close look at what he's doing. And I think fans are really going to enjoy this one, when we release it.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. We're hearing that he could be back obviously by week 1, which is super exciting. And, he went down last year in that Denver game, as you mentioned. The Jets were 5-2. They finished 7-10. So I think that's kind of all you need to know about what he means to this team, where they were 5-2 and they finished, 7-10. That's, 2-8 the rest of the way. So to get him back this year is going to be huge. You pair him up with, Garrett Wilson, you got Rodgers. I mean, there's so many young weapons, not just on the offense side of the ball, but the defensive side of the ball as well. So definitely looking forward to that getting released here once he's back. So to kind of close things out here, tell everybody where they can find you, on social media and all that good stuff.
Yeah, it's like I would just urge fans to subscribe to the Jets YouTube page. I mean, this is where all, our 1GD Films productions, are launching. Just some really incredible stuff. There's even a girls flag football documentary coming out in a couple weeks that, if you're just a fan of documentaries, I urge people to watch it, because it's just a really unique look at, the growth of what girls flag football has become in New Jersey and New York with what the Jets are doing. There's so many unique stories there. We did a documentary a couple years ago on Mike Pryor, who drives the truck for the Jets and, is a retired New York City firefighter for 9/11. There's just many different things on there that I think a fan, might have missed, or now they're just kind of catching on to the team because, obviously the Jets, look like we're obviously going to be a championship contender this year. But I think there's like a lot of great offerings there. Like I said before, just a shout out to our crew that, they're the best. I'd love to just go through and name everybody right now, but I don't want to leave anybody out. But, I think I just urge fans to follow along all season. We'll be there in training camp. We'll be there through the season. You catch One Just Drive, catch the Diehards. But yeah, like I said, really appreciate you having me on. This is fun.
Yeah, definitely. I really appreciate you coming on. It was a lot of fun. Definitely stay tuned to everything you guys got in store. Obviously, a lot more coming our way as we continue to get ready here and the season gets closer into training camp and obviously the regular season and hopefully postseason and even longer than that. So a lot of things coming, a lot of excitement. This will do it for another episode of In the Trench with Gang Green. As always, hope you enjoyed it and thanks for listening.